I had a great time working on this movie because it was a lot of fun working with really smart people who deeply care about the role of science in society and how we can use the tools of science to solve big problems like climate change. I spent a lot of time talking to the actors, to Adam, to the VFX folks. Leonardo and I spent a lot of time talking through all of the different scenes where he has this big moment where he can't take it anymore, and he just sort of loses it and says, "Can't we all agree that this is a bad thing?" Leo and I talked about this a lot. He has to speak for the scientists here. This is what we all feel. We're learning this information, and we need people to take action. So Leo and I spent a lot of time on that scene in particular because this is the frustration that all of us as scientists who work on all these problems feel. We need everybody to help us to try to fix it. Because there are ways to fix these problems. We can do something about climate change, absolutely. We just need folks to get out there and help do it. So I spent a lot of time talking with Adam, with Leo, with Jennifer about just, how do we convey what scientists feel about the information that we're learning, and what do we do? I started on the movie with Adam really early on in the process, actually. I think we first started talking almost 2 years ago now, and just when he'd first drafted up the script, it was actually kind of a strange moment. When I first saw the script, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. It was, in fact, I think February, just as it was being announced. We talked about it, and I said, "Did you have a crystal ball? Like, how did you know that this was going to happen?" Adam and I had a lot of conversations, and I felt like one of the reasons I was so excited to work on the movie with him is because he really respects the science and the scientific process. And in fact, a lot of the point of the movie is Adam making the point that we really want science-based decision-making in the way that we approach problems in the world. So I felt like I had a very strong presence in the movie. They really listened to all the things that I said. We had to kind of compress a few things, and obviously there are very big science fiction elements in the movie, but just the general philosophy of how do scientists think, how do we act, I felt like Adam really got it, and he really wanted to represent scientists as human beings. Space is full of really large comets, like the one in the movie. It's about 9 kilometers across, so it's the size of a mountain. It's pretty big. This comet I modeled sort of loosely after a comet that we discovered last year called Comet Neowise. This comet is sort of roughly modeled off of its parameters. It's a pretty big object. It certainly would cause global devastation if it ever were to impact. But fortunately for us, space is incredibly, incredibly huge. So the odds of something ever getting close to our planet are very slim. I mean, I'm not going to say zero, but they're really, really, really low odds. In real life, my team and I found a comet that is about sort of 5 kilometers across. It's called Comet Neowise. And this object we discovered in late March with our orbiting space telescope called Neowise. So the comet is named after the telescope. In real life, we found this object in late March, and by July, it had made its closest approach to the sun and the Earth. Now, it didn't get anywhere close to our planet. There was never a danger of collision, but it was bright enough that people all over the world were able to see the comet and take pictures of it. So comets can come from the outer part of the solar system with incredible speeds. In the movie, the comet is about 9 kilometers across, and it's first spotted by Jennifer Lawrence's character, Kate, when it's pretty far out. It's past the orbit of the planet Jupiter, so it's pretty far away. But that said, the comets move with such great speeds relative to Earth that it would only take it 6 months to make it all the way from Jupiter into the inner part of the solar system. Astronomy gives you a wonderful sense of perspective because, in my case, I spend a lot of time looking at airless rocks in space. And when you do that, you quickly realize that this is a really, really special place in the cosmos. There is nowhere like it. And even if there is, we can't go there. We don't have warp drives. That Star Trek technology, that's not real. We actually cannot go somewhere else. There is no other planet. When you think about that, you realize, actually, we really need to be throwing everything we can at trying to protect this place. As astronomers, we have tools and techniques for doing remote sensing, seeing things far away, getting physical information about objects, even when they're distant. Those tools and techniques are the same ones, or very similar to the tools that we can use to study this planet, our home planet. So I've recently started working on some new research that's looking down now instead of up but it's using the same kind of tools to map out the distribution of invasive species. So in other words, plants that aren't supposed to be here, because they drive things like terrible wildfires that are happening all across the western US and Australia. But also, these invasive species cause a great loss of biodiversity of the native plants and animals that are supposed to be in an area. So for me, this movie is very much from the heart. It's about the importance of looking up to remind us that we need to actually make our home here, because this is it. This is where we're going to be. Jennifer was great to work with because she's also incredibly smart, but she's also very, we talked a lot about the role of gender in a field that's very male-dominated. And we had a lot of great conversations about that, about just, how is it to be not sometimes taken seriously because of just a random circumstance of how you're born, right? Who you happen to be. It just shouldn't matter when it comes to your work, but of course it does. So she's very smart about these things. We had a lot of great conversations. There's a scene where Leo's character is accidentally, or is identified as being the discoverer of the comet, when in fact he's really not. She found it. He did the orbital calculations, but she actually made the discovery, and she's just ignored. And there's just this great moment where you know that she's just knows that she's been left out of being actually given proper credit for her work. So we had a lot of great conversations about that. We also talked a lot about just, what's it like to be a student and to be feeling like you're just starting out in your career. And yet she's an expert. She's a superstar in her area. She is really, really technically competent. So I thought she brought a great dignity to the role because she properly portrays the fact that she really is an expert at this subject. Rob was fantastic. I felt Rob did such a great job in this movie because in real life there really is somebody who is the planetary defense officer at NASA. This is Lindley Johnson. He's an expert in actually orbital debris as well as asteroids. So he's a very, very technical background that includes tracking objects that are moving all over the sky, including things that people have made as well as natural objects like asteroids and comets. I felt that Rob did a really good job of portraying just the fact that he is determined to get the truth out there. He's going to just tell you what's going on, and I thought he did a lot of credit to the character. Meryl Streep is terrifying. She's as the president, she's so frightening in her ability to just simply cut someone down so quickly and make her point. So we did get to talk a little bit about just the dialogue, some of the places where she's using some of the pushing back the whole scene where they're arguing over the percentages of whether this is really likely to happen. The scientists are saying this is really, really likely to happen, and by that we mean 99.78%. She comes back and she says, so we'll call it 70%, and then she sort of haggles them down, and they're trying to say, but no, that's not the real number. And she just sort of says, no, that's not the number I need to go deal with my midterm election or whatever. And that whole process, we did have some discussion about that, of just how that would really work. I felt she did a great job there, and she's really quite terrifying. One of the things about science is that we're really supposed to be neutral. It really is supposed to be just the facts. In other words, just tell us the numbers, and that's all that matters. But unfortunately, when we try to communicate this, sometimes now there's a phenomenon of trolling where somebody's trying to draw you away from that neutral position where you're really just dealing with facts into the world of emotion. And science is really supposed to be this very neutral, unbiased point of view that we evaluate whether something is true or not. But trolling is designed to get you away from that and make you argue on the basis of your emotions, specifically anger, usually. That's not about science. Science is not about arguing on those terms. It really should be on the basis of neutral fact. Trolling, unfortunately, elicits a lot of emotion, and human beings are wired to respond to that, in my opinion. So it's very hard, I think, for people to not want to react to that and say, no, you're wrong, that's wrong. But unfortunately, it's not done, trolling is not done from a perspective of trying to have an honest debate as scientists. It's done from the perspective of trying to push you off of your neutral standpoint and into a response of anger. In other words, it's to try to get you to lose your cool. It's really, really damaging. And I personally think as a scientist, there's not a lot of use in responding to trolls, particularly because they're not actually trying to have a reasoned debate. That's what's the thing that's interesting as a scientist. If you don't want to do that, then it's a waste of time. In real life, it would take several years, most likely, to put together any sort of a deflection mission for a comet. It just takes a long time to build spacecraft. And then we have the consideration of just how do we actually get the object, the spacecraft, into position relative to the asteroid or comet such that it can actually push it out of the way. So we did compress the timeline quite a bit with this comet. In reality, we would have loved to have had several years or even a decade before it makes its close approach to be able to do that deflection mission. We kind of skipped that part of the movie because it would be a lot of design reviews and conference calls and things like that, maybe not the most cinematic. But in the movie, you can see that they launched this just ton of missions to try to push the comet off course. The president has her own reasons for wanting to have a big hero, and she picks this awful person, played by Ron Perlman, to do the job. In real life, the missions we would probably fly would be robotic because it's a lot safer. And of course, you know, they have this one shot at really, in the movie, pushing the comet off course so that it won't impact the Earth. And of course, in this case, the president decides not to do the right thing. I hope that people take away from this movie that it's really important to make science-based decisions in society. Fundamentally, I think the message of the movie is that science is happening to us regardless of how we think or feel about it, what we think about it. Science is what's happening, and we can either make decisions based on that knowledge and have a chance to change the outcome, or we can ignore it at our peril. To me, that's, I think, the main message of the movie.